In the early 90s, Lionel made a lot of very good steam locomotives. The trouble is, many of them came with a smoke unit that just didn't work very well. It was used in these and several other steam locomotives. Here's a complete list of all the locomotives that utilized this smoke unit. If you have one of these, you may want to make the modification that I'm about to show you. It'll make the smoke unit work much, much better. I'll hold on to the back of this locomotive and we'll show you what was very typical. Now, this is about as much smoke as you would see these locomotives put out on the average. Part of the problem is they just aren't getting enough air in the combustion chamber to make more smoke. We're going to show you a small modification that makes all of this work much better. The other thing I'm going to do is show you how to add much more smoke fluid to the locomotive so that you don't have to resupply the smoke fluid as frequently. Most locomotives come apart the same way. There's usually 1 or 2 screws in the front and a couple in the back, and when you remove these screws you can separate the boiler casting from the chassis. No matter which locomotive you have, once you get the boiler shell off, the smoke unit will look something like this. This is the part that goes up the stack. There's a fluid reservoir over here, and the puffer, which produces the air for the smoke, is right inside here. Now, the problem with this smoke unit is not the element. It's not whether or not you have too much or not enough smoke fluid in it. The problem is it just doesn't get enough air. Here's the hole where the air comes into the smoke unit. It goes down to the bottom of the fluid reservoir and passes underneath this baffle right through here. On the other side of that baffle is the smoke element, and this one's all burned out already. If it makes its way up through here, then the smoke will come out the stack. If you overfill this smoke unit, the fluid clogs the air passage. Therefore, no air can get through. The element heats up too hot, or you may see a situation with your locomotive where liquid smoke fluid is actually blown out the stack. The problem is the air is trapped in the bottom of this reservoir. There's fluid that won't permit the air to get through and it just blows it straight up out of the stack. We're going to make one modification. We're going to install a new heating element, but we're going to drill a hole right through here first, and that will permit much more air to get through to the hot element, and it will also permit you to put more fluid in. We'll unsolder one side of the smoke element, and you may want to strip the tape and unsolder the other side too, but what I'm going to do is just clip this off so I can resolder right to this pin. That'll let us remove this, and we'll take the pliers and straighten this out. Cut the rest of this one off and remove the old smoke element. And now we'll set this in a vise and drill a hole right here. We're going to drill a hole about halfway between the bottom and the top of this baffle. It's a good idea to just get something and scribe a line and make a mark so that you can see where the hole needs to be made, and mount this in a vise. I've tried several different diameter holes, and it seems that 1/8 works out just about right. There we go. That'll work just fine. Next, we're going to replace the heating element. Here are the two parts that you need. This is a heating element, and this is a fiberglass sleeve that acts as the wick that draws the smoke fluid up around the element. You can buy these from parts suppliers that are advertised in O-gauge railroading. We need to bend the lead on one end of this heating element to make it fit perfectly into the chamber. When we're done, it should look like this. When you install the heating element back in the top part of the smoke unit, start with the long lead into the hole with the gasket on it. Then the short lead goes into the small one here, and it seats in there like that. Here's the reason you put the bend in, to get as much air as possible around here. But remember, before you put it in, put the fiberglass sleeve on first, and then put it into the top of the smoke unit, like this. When you're done, it should seat just like that. Put your finger on the bottom of it and then rotate it around to the top and pull the wire down so that it holds it and keeps it from falling out. Now you're ready to reinstall the top of the smoke unit. When you removed the smoke unit, you may have noticed that there was a gasket on the top that looked like this. They almost always break, and there's no replacement parts for that gasket. So what I have found works best is just to go get some gasket forming material like this Permatex Foreman gasket that you can get in an auto parts store, and just apply that to the edge of the smoke unit like this, so that when you seal it back up, you get a nice airtight seal. Most of the smoke units that I've serviced or worked on that have a problem is usually because so much smoke leaks out the side of the unit that only about half of it gets out the top. There. Now, it needs to be pointed out that you don't have to have a whole lot of this all the way around this edge. Just one nice thin bead will work perfectly. One other thing to point out, before you put this back in, take your smoke element and move all the fiberglass edges of this sleeve back away from the top so that they don't get into the way of a good seal. There, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to turn that and slide it right down into the smoke unit. There we go. Then the last thing we'll do is attach the 2 screws for the top. One here. And one in the front. And that will compress the top down on our nice gasket material and give us a good seal. One other place that I like to put this is right around the hole where the long wire comes out, as well as the hole where the short wire is. Just dab a little bit on top, just like that. I did this because it gives you a much better air seal. And anything you can do to get a better air seal just gives you that much more smoke coming out the stack. Now I'll reconnect the 2 electrical connections, and I want to point out that it's not the same on every locomotive. They may not have to be soldered. Sometimes they have this wrapping around the screw. The only important thing to remember is that you need 1 ground and 1 hot connection to make this work. I removed the headlight much earlier so that we could get it out of the way so you could see the smoke unit. It's back in place now, so now we're ready to put the shell back on. There, we got the handrail back in place. Get the bulb positioned. Okay. And we'll put a little bit of smoke fluid in it. And remember, we can put more smoke fluid in now than we used to. So put a little stream of fluid in. And let's set him up on the track and see the fruits of our labor. Oh, that's much better. Now, we've not only got much more smoke coming out the stack, we've got smoke coming out of the valve body that we never had before. And that's good. Well, we've vastly improved the smoke unit in this locomotive.